Spectre is the return of Skyfall director Sam Mendes, as well as the return of Daniel Craig as James Bond, and it also introduces Christoph Waltz as the villain, Franz Oberhauser, and Lee Seydoux, sorry I don't know how to pronounce your name, as the main Bond girl. Now for those of you who saw the movie, you can tell that this plot is very reminiscent of the early 1960s Sean Connery Bond movies, especially with Spectre.
Spectre? Spectre. Special Executive for Counterintelligence, Terrorism, Revenge, Extortion.
A global organization intends to control the world. And that's generally the plot of this movie without giving away specifics. Despite the fact that I'm a huge James Bond fan, I actually found this film to be somewhat disappointing. And while the bad parts of this movie certainly are not good, there are a lot of parts in this movie that are really good. And I guess you could say some of the disappointment in Spectre is because it was riding right off the heels of Skyfall, my favorite Bond movie. Now, by far the best scene in the entire movie would have to be the opening action scene, particularly the opening tracking shot. It was very Birdman-esque, and it really did help set the tone for the entire movie. And while we're on the subject of tonality and set in the movie Spectre, this is by far one of the best shot Bond movies ever. The cinematography is beautiful. Skyfall director Sam Mendes proves again that he knows how to direct Bond in a phenomenal movie, particularly with the directed action scenes. The action scenes were definitely one of the highlights of this movie, and I'd say if you're contemplating ever seeing this movie, go see it because you are going to love the action scenes. And of course, the return of Daniel Craig as James Bond, as well as the returning cast members of Ralph Fiennes as M and Noomi Harris as Eve Moneypenny are phenomenal. And now on to the bad in the movie. Now going back to the action scenes in the movie, there is a lot of points during them where the music played really gives away how the chase will end. And what I mean in that is that that music kind of ruins how the chase will end. For example, there is a scene in Rome, a car chase in Rome. I'm not going to spoil how it ends, but you can tell that the music played during the entire action scene kind of gives away how it's going to end before it even really begins. And I'd also like to point out that a lot of music used in the movie Spectre is ripped directly from Skyfall. And yes, I know it's the same composer, Thomas Newman, but come on man, you can compose something new for this movie. Aside from that particular point, I think that most of the problems with this movie resonate within the script itself. And it shows in a lot of places, particularly the pace of the film. It drags on for a little too long, and also in the characters of Christoph Waltz's villain and as well as the main Bond girl. Now with Christoph Waltz, you can tell that his acting would have worked for this type of character, but the way that it was written, you felt that it was a wasted opportunity. And as for the Bond girl, I thought she was very poorly written, and in all honesty, during the final action scene, don't worry, I won't spoil anything, it involves her in danger, and I couldn't have cared less if she had died. And speaking of the last act, I thought that it was so poorly written that by the time the third act had rolled around, it had turned into an unintentional parody of itself. It was hard for me to take anything seriously. Not to say that it didn't have its entertaining moments, but overall it was a little dragged out and a little too cartoony. And really, despite all of the negatives in this movie, I think you should go see it. It's no doubt fun and no doubt entertaining. And while there could have been certain aspects of the film that could have been improved if the script had been written a little more solidly, it was entertaining, no doubt. And Spectre gets 3.5 out of 5 stars.